Welcome to A Healthy Curiosity, the podcast that explores what it takes to be well in a busy world with self-care strategies from Chinese medicine. I'm your host, Brody Welch, here to support you on your journey of health, happiness, and personal evolution. Welcome to today's show. I'm your host, Brody Welch, licensed acupuncturist, transformational coach, and host of this show, A Healthy Curiosity, where we think about and talk about what it takes to be well in a busy world. And today we're going to be talking about one of my most important and most favorite tools for this, which is mindfulness. Mindfulness on a personal level, as well as on a community-wide level and a planetary level. My guest today is Liz Rutledge, who is deeply passionate about the environment, who's been practicing mindfulness in one form or another since she was 10 years old, and who teaches mindfulness at schools in the Denver area and is in the process of getting her Mindful Schools certification. And so we're going to get into how mindfulness on all these levels interconnect. Liz also is a blogger, and her SustainableThree.com has been going strong since 2014. Liz, welcome to A Healthy Curiosity.
Thank you, Brody. I'm happy to be here.
So let's start by talking about what you think mindfulness is and why it's important to you.
Well, my favorite definition is that it's just being present in a moment without judgment, being aware so that we have the power of choice. I would say it's important to me because I have found I come from a long line of anxious people. I think it's baked in our DNA in my family, and have found that practicing daily some sort of calming breath practice helps keep that at bay and helps me think more clearly and have more focus and helps reduce stress levels and that sort of thing.
So just on a practical level, I love that. You just implied something very big there, which is that just because it runs in your family doesn't mean that it's something that we have to be sentenced to. So in this case, anxiety, our daily choices matter a lot in terms of whether or not we're ruled by anxiety or whether or not we're able to reckon with it such that it's not in the driver's seat. And so, I couldn't agree with you more that having a practice of mindfulness is so important in helping to not fall victim to it. So what does your practice look like?
Well, it's evolved over the years, but basically I've settled into a routine of I try to get up before the rest of the family. So I have a husband and 3 kids and a Labrador retriever. And if they're all still sleeping is the best time for me, but I'll get up, come down, start the kettle, make myself a cup of tea, come into I have a little creative space, kind of my office space, and I will just sit down and do like a 3-minute meditation. I really like to use Insight Timer because it has a starting bell and an ending bell, and you can do like Om sounds or, it's nature sounds or just silence, but just taking like a few minutes, just get really centered. And then I do a gratitude practice and just think of something that I'm really grateful for that day. And then I'll just sort of go through setting up my day and kind of picking out those big rocks that are the big ones to get done for today to decrease discouragement later in the day. And then just sort of do a visualization of how I'd like it to go. And then that takes, 10-ish minutes. It's a manageable length of time to do it every day. And on the days that I don't do it, I notice big time.
Well, you get a lot done in that 10 minutes. That is a lot to do. It's like, so it sounds like if I can recap that you do a few minutes of meditation followed by some gratitude, followed by visualizing your day, including and especially your main priorities. Do I have that right?
Yeah.
After, of course, getting up early to ensure that you have that you're encountering yourself first before the other members of your family and having your tea.
Yeah. And it's because I have 3 kids and have to get out the door, I usually, if it was much more than that, I wouldn't be able to do it every day, but I'm realizing how important it is to do it every day if possible.
Awesome. And what kinds of things do you notice on the days that you don't do it, out of curiosity?
I'm just shorter tempered, more irritable. I have three teenagers, basically. I mean, one's about to be 13, and just a lot. I don't have as much patience, and I don't have as much patience for the kids when I go and teach in the schools when they're rowdy or not settling in. I feel a little bit less patient. Not, I'll try to not show it, but internally, I won't feel as patient.
I do know because I have similar results in the laboratory of my life on the days that I don't get to meditate until later on, or don't get to meditate as long as I need, or tap into gratitude. So yeah, it absolutely, I think it's those practices that really allow us to show up how we want to be in the world. And it really is a gift to the other people in our lives to do what seems like it can feel like a selfish act, but it's so not. And it benefits absolutely everyone that you come across. I'm wondering if you could share, you mentioned having teenagers and doing this work in the schools. How did you come to want to share mindfulness with kids?
Well, my daughter, when my oldest, who's now 18, was 12, an older sibling of a friend of hers took his own life. And I thought, how does anyone who's 14 even know how to do that? And also, did he not realize that he has his whole life ahead of him and we have to get through life struggles? I think that suicide is either the number one or the number two killer of teens in Colorado as of this year, or as of 2018. And I just think that's unacceptable, that these young people are not realizing that there's more, that they can get help, that they can reach out. And I get, if you're really depressed, sometimes it's hard to reach for that lifeline. But my hope is by teaching these young kids, and I started at the middle school level, but now I'm teaching elementary school children, is that by giving them these tools, and there's just basic breathing at a very young age, perhaps, with the mindfulness aspect of just recognizing how am I feeling and what can I do from this point forward, maybe I can prevent. I just keep saying, like, if I could even keep one child from taking their own life, all of this will have been worth it. So I've been doing this for about 5 years.
It's such important work, and I'm so glad that you're out there doing it.
Thank you.
For people who may be less familiar with mindfulness and how it could be, well, first of all, how is it different to teach kids or young people than it is to teach adults about mindfulness?
Well, it's interesting because at the middle school level, they're kind of resistant. They don't really take it very seriously. And there's usually one or two in the classroom that'll be looking at me the whole time and not really practicing it. But at the elementary school level, especially in the younger grades, like second and third grade, they're super receptive. And adults are super receptive. If they've come, like I've done wellness workshops with adults, and if they've come for that purpose, they're really receptive. I've also noticed some adults that are super resistant. So I think it depends on the person and their own journey and their own experience. But the younger the child is, the more willing they are to give it a try.
That makes some sense because certainly there is, well, it seems like too that if you're talking to kids in second or third grade, they haven't had as much practice with mindlessness or like be a constant distraction, being constantly plugged into smartphones and things like that, where there is, I mean, I think it's just a really rare thing to see someone in middle school or high school who isn't constantly paying attention to 4,000 different inputs. And the idea that single tasking or paying attention to just something like the breath or just what feeling is arising in the body or what sensation or what emotion is arising or what thought is arising, that really any of those things are something that like kids can really wrap their heads around. But I know that a friend of mine who's a yoga instructor and a very mindful parent talked about, using hand gestures and saying like, is your feeling this big, and having her hands way far apart, or is your feeling this big, and, with their hands much closer together, and having her toddler really get that, oh yeah, like I don't have to throw a temper tantrum to get my feelings taken seriously. I can convey, like just sort of like what's going on, and recognize that it's a feeling, that it's not going to be sticking around forever. And that it's something that, and really just creating that separation of that we're not our thoughts, we're not our sensations, and we're not our feelings. And that I think is so important in even at a subconscious level, getting that into kids, that like none of these things are fixed.
Right.
And observe them and step outside of the experience, that we can create that little bit of separation that makes it a lot easier to deal with.
Right. And the idea, I think, with mindfulness, especially the breath work and getting really, really still and present, is creating more and more space between what happens and our reaction to it. And so we can actually create a response to a stimulus, right? Rather than a reaction. We have a thoughtful response. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So if you are dealing with like that resistant middle schooler or high schooler, is there something that they tend to respond to as a technique, or something that like could be like a back pocket sort of, if they take nothing else away from the practice, something that they have reported back that's been useful or practical, or something that they've appreciated?
Well, the biggest thing that middle schoolers struggle with, that I hear again and again and again, is trouble going to sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
Usually I just talk about giving them tools in their toolbox. And so I'll walk through, you could try a body scan, you could try breathing exercise, you could try pattern breathing or visualization or whatever else. And sometimes that, or white noise. I mean, there's a bunch of different things to try, but also I just tell them, I'll start by saying, like, I'm giving you a gift, which is just basically this realization that you already have it in you. And I always start with like, look, you have these lungs, they're in your body. You have them from the moment you're born till the moment you die, and they're free. Like, you've got this free access to something that can help you at any moment, at any time. And I don't know if that helps them or not, but one of the biggest things that does seem to help typically the middle schooler is that sleeping, helping to get to sleep at night. That seems to be something they really struggle with.
That seems like such an important and helpful thing. What other kinds of changes have you noticed in working with kids?
Well, the middle schoolers, so we run it as, I've done it in all different formats in the classroom. So I've done it in morning meeting with 250 kids. I've done it in the classroom with sort of 20 to 30 kids. I've done it as a club after school. We're still doing that after school with sort of 12 to 15 kids. And I've done it during like what they call refocus, which is like detention. What I've found consistently is that kids want to share. They want to be able to talk about what's going on for them. So I think giving them a space where they feel heard, acknowledged, and then also just give them some tools. Like, this is kind of counterintuitive, but with the smartphone, turn it off at night, but maybe you can use it as a white noise, across the room or whatever. But there's all these mindfulness apps now.
Yes.
So I'll be like, look, there's all these free apps. So if you're lucky enough to have a smartphone, tablet, or even access to YouTube, there's all these free tools at your disposal. And I think that's another way to connect with those middle school age kids, because a lot of them have the smartphones and access to that. And that gives them something that they can have with them, that guides them through a practice if they can remember. And a lot of those have like a, hey, it's time for your daily mindfulness practice reminder that pops up on the phone. So, but also talking about the balance of taking a break from that phone, not using it, not looking at the screen before you go to bed. That's why you're having trouble going to sleep at night, kind of a thing. And the littlies, like the second graders, because none of them have any of that, just talking through like, when could you use some of these tools? And a lot of their examples have to do with like fights with siblings usually. So I chose to walk away. I chose to not hit my sister. Those kinds of things just warm my heart when I'm like, they'll say like, I stepped away, I took a few deep breaths, and then I came back. And I'm like, oh my gosh, you're like 8 and you're doing
that's amazing. Yeah. That really is amazing. I love hearing that. So that's some really powerful outreach that you're doing in the schools. And I know that you are also passionate about taking mindfulness into the community. And so I'd love to hear a little bit about what you mean by it takes a village, so let's nurture the village.
Yeah, so we had a couple scares in our family around drugs and anxiety, some stuff that came up in our own family. And 3 years into my daughter's experience at high school, I realized we didn't have a parent teacher student organization. We didn't have a PTA. We didn't have a PTSA. And I was like, wait a minute, we don't have a PTSA. But a friend and I had come to this high school of 2,700 students and said, hey, we had this scare. My friend also had a scare with her child with drugs. And we went to the principal and said, hey, we'd really like to bring this programming to the school because when we went looking for resources, we couldn't find them quickly and easily when we needed them. So we would like to do videos. People are busy. They don't have time to sit through a long seminar about your teen on drugs. So we'd like to do sort of like a TED Talk type format where we do 10 to 15 minute talks with experts about various topics. And so this concept of Angel Talks was born. And my friend Bernie Slowey and I did that together, and it's taking off. And so we have created that as a live event this year where people can come, but then also they have this video recording so that if you're not dealing with a marijuana scare in freshman year, maybe by junior year, you need that. And the video is available. So I consider that to be nurturing our community because, it was a scary thing for our family. And I'd like to help other people have the resources that they need if something like that happens. And we got through it, and our daughter's about to graduate and she's doing really great. But I think it takes parents being mindful of what's going on with their kids, teachers being mindful of what's going on with their students being mindful of what's going on with their friends, and just in general schools having programming in place like mental health services and resources available so that if you get in that moment when you're like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do, there's something available at your fingertips.
If you've got a healthy curiosity, you want to know how you can be doing right by your body and how to live a more mindful, streamlined life in accordance with your values. While I love that you tune into the show every week, are you taking action? If not, why not? Here are the top 3 roadblocks that could be holding you back. 1, thinking that knowing is doing. They're different things. Knowing the properties of verbs is different than actually taking them. Knowing how to change a habit is different than actually changing up your routine. Knowing is the first step, but the second, third, fourth, and 100th steps involve action. Number 2, thinking that because you're smart and used to being successful, that you need to do it all yourself. This one dogged me for years as an independent-minded overachiever. That is, until I realized that 1, I can't see my own blind spots, and 2, I don't know what I don't know. Now, I'd much rather work with a guide who can point out the shortcut for the path I want to travel rather than get lost in the woods alone. Not only is it way easier, but I'm more likely to show up for myself if I've told my coach or my mastermind partners what I'm trying to do. Reason number 3, thinking that you don't have the money. What we spend money on is a reflection of what we're prioritizing. Maybe it's time to prioritize you. I'm opening up my calendar for a handful of one-on-one coaching clients. I've helped thousands of women break up with stress, optimize their habits, mood, hormones, weight, and vitality with integrative body-mind tools from Chinese medicine, yoga, neuroscience, coaching, and ancient wisdom. Just as importantly, I pour my heart into each of my clients, and you will feel that love in every single interaction. If you're ready to feel more calm and confident in your own skin, start feeling younger every year, feeling like you're at the center of your own life rather than just getting through it, and feel loved and supported in the process, head over to the Work With Me page at brodywelch.com and apply to work with me one-on-one. That's Brody with an IE and Welch with a CH. Now back to the show. Is this something that is just available for people in your community or in the school that you're involved with, or is this the kind of thing that other people can access as well?
Well, we open the live events to our community, but the videos are on YouTube. If you search up East Angel Talks, I think East High School Angel Talks or East Angel Talks, it should come right up. And we probably have 10 videos up there so far. And it's a work in progress, but we have some really great content up there.
What a wonderful idea, though, just kind of as a way of supporting people who are going through things that are not exactly, unique challenges.
Yeah. And I think, so now we have reformed the PTSA, and I think that's this critical thing that people are missing on PTSA, PTA, whatever. I don't want to be doing that, but what we've created is a sense of connectedness and a sense of community, especially for those new parents coming in where they're just like, oh my gosh, high school, it's so overwhelming, right? Because you're dealing with these people that have gone from being children to, by the time they leave, they're adults, like they can vote and stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
And buy cigarettes. And then you just have to be mindful of their journey and their process. And conversations are key. Eye contact, and even if it's only 5 minutes a day, having some kind of contact and checking in with them. Hey, are you okay? Do you need anything? Are you good? So, and also if they've been fortunate enough to have some of the mindfulness training, then they can perform better on tests and perform better in their auditions for the school play or whatever their sport, or if they're in speech and debate. Like, all this breath work can help with all those kinds of scenarios. So it goes way beyond just, calm. It can help them actually perform better too.
And it's so practical, right? It aligns with what students want anyway. So it's not just like helping parents control their kids. It's helping parents empower their kids to be successful, both in school as well as later in life, in ways that are just as important as what they're learning academically. Yeah.
And also just to be able to check in with their body and go, this situation I'm in right now, does this feel healthy? Does this feel good? Does this feel safe? And then be able to choose. If you're just going straight from the hip, you're not necessarily going to make the best choices. And, in high school, their brains aren't fully formed. So their prefrontal cortexes aren't exactly thinking clearly about the long-term consequences. And mindfulness can help them tap into, controlling their stress hormone of cortisol. And also, like, there's a few other things, like, with the littler kids or even the middle school kids, when we do the practice, I'll be like, if you're not comfortable closing your eyes, put your head down on your desk. I don't know if you're like me, but growing up when we were like first, second grade, the teachers would be like, put your heads down on your desk. And it felt like this punishment. But actually, when you turn the pituitary gland 90 degrees that way, it actually has a physiological calming effect. And it actually calms them down. So usually I'll turn off the lights, invite them to close their eyes and say, look, if you're not comfortable closing your eyes or you prefer, just put your head down on your hands on your desk. And that can just calm them right down quickly.
Interesting. I didn't know that about the position of the head. That's fascinating. The idea that we feed what we focus on is something that I think is really important for young people to get, especially because so often they do feel like they don't have a lot of power. Like, they're being told what classes they have to take. They're being told, what their bedtime is or what their curfew is, or what, that they don't necessarily feel like they have a lot of power. And opening them up to the idea that actually where you choose to put your mind is a huge source of power, because then you're orienting your whole world differently. And that really, like, it's a huge way of taking your power back, to stop focusing on the people who are annoying or pissing you off or frustrating you or at school, and to just choose to shift your focus to the things that make you happy, or like the friends that are supportive, or that kind of thing. And just what you said earlier, like what you touched on about that, what situations make you feel unsafe and what is making you feel stressed, and being able to even recognize that they have more choice than they might think is so key.
Yeah. And like, one thing I've kind of done with my daughter is like, well, you're not happy with such and such friends or such and such situation, we can transfer schools. You can do online school. Like, you always have a choice, right? You always have a choice of, if you want to hang out with certain people anymore, or if you want to you can unfriend people on social media, and you can put your phone away. You can take a complete break from your phone and take a break from that, or you can drop a class. I mean, like, it's not the end of the world if you drop a class and then make it up later or whatever, right?
Absolutely. Changing the parameters of what is allowed, what's permissible, and what we actually reminding our kids that there's always something that they can do in whatever situation they're in.
Yeah, for sure.
I know that you are also passionate about mindfulness with respect to the environment and what you call mindful sustainability. I'd love for you to, first of all, unpack what mindful sustainability is.
I had this blog about sustainable living, and I was going along with that with articles, just trying to kind of educate people and encourage people to, although true sustainability is really hard for the average person in America, but maybe we could take little steps. So the three in SustainableThree comes from like levels of depth, like how far do you want to go or how deep do you want to go? And now it's sort of turned into like take three deep breaths or whatever. But then it was also simultaneously, because of that death when my daughter was 12, doing mindfulness. And then this last year, I kind of had this light bulb moment when I went, oh my gosh, it's all mindfulness. It's mindfulness about ourselves, about our community, and about our planet, and making the choices that make sure that we have a survivable planet, a livable, thriving, healthy planet. And so I find that mindful sustainability is more about thinking about your choices every single day. So taking a pause and going, okay, I'm going to the grocery store. Do I have my reusable shopping bags? Do I have those mesh bags so I don't have to use the little plastic ones for produce? Could I try tear shopping where I bring my own jar and do bulk cereals or rice or beans or whatever else, reducing packaging? My understanding is that China isn't taking our trash anymore. So I really think the next big push needs to be to reduce packaging use. But it could also be being like taking a choice of, if I live close enough to my office, could I try biking there one day a week? It doesn't have to be this big all or nothing choice, but I guess I see mindful sustainability as choosing things that are more in that direction of reducing waste, improving our air quality, improving our water quality, improving our food quality, choosing organic over conventional, for example, to make a statement that I want more of this healthy food, choosing to maybe not do genetically modified foods, to say, I'm not comfortable with this yet. The science, in my opinion, isn't there yet. So I'm going to choose non-GMO foods, that kind of a thing. But that's just basically, using a reusable water bottle, making a choice of making a statement when you go somewhere. It embarrasses the heck out of my family. But like if we go somewhere, I refuse a straw. If we go somewhere out to eat, I'll refuse the styrofoam cups. And I will say to the people at the restaurant, like, that's not recyclable. Where I live, that's not recyclable. I'm going to choose to not use that. So just like all those little choices along the way, I think.
Yeah. So it's a way of living your values. And it sounds like with an awareness of your impact on the greater ecosystem.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, and yeah, and I love the way that you put that it doesn't have to be this all or nothing thing. You don't have to feel like an environmental radical in order to always have a travel mug in your car so that you don't have to get styrofoam or, like whatever plastic coated paper cup is available from your local coffee shop or what, that these kinds of things that are just relatively small, that once they become habits, they're automatic and then they're just not a big deal. They're just what you do. They're just an extension of your values.
Exactly. But also like the whole point of mindfulness is no judgment. Mm-hmm. So also just like not judging other people if they have a straw,
Sure.
We're not going to change the whole world in a day, but maybe through conversations. I had a friend who was like, didn't realize that the coffee mug, if you go to Starbucks, for example, like the plastic lid and the cardboard liner are recyclable, but the coffee cup isn't. And she was like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. And I was like, yeah. And if you bring your own mug, they give you 10 cents off or whatever, or you can ask for a for here mug. Can I please have a for here mug if you're not going, whatever. But now in Denver, ironically, they are starting to recycle the coffee mug too. So that's good and bad, right? Like it's not a dissuader from reusing, but it's something. So just like, I just think like people don't know, which is why I started my blog, because people just don't know, and it's confusing and separating, and it's different everywhere you go. So it's so hard. So I'm trying to make it easier.
It's so easy to get overwhelmed by the state of how bad it is, because really the planet, I believe, is in crisis, and it's not our job to fix it all at once, but it is ours to reckon with. Like, how do we given the state of things right now, that how can we live our lives in a way that feels like it's in integrity with our values, and being able to have our daily actions reflect that can just feel good.
Yeah. And also to your point about the teenagers, feeling like they have no power. I think a lot of us feel like we don't have power because maybe the government isn't taking these steps or whatever else. But what I've witnessed is we absolutely have power in what we choose to spend our money on and what we choose to support. So
absolutely. And that's really, yeah, we vote with our dollars, and as consumers, we do have maybe arguably way too many choices, but it certainly does matter. And being able to think about money as energy, and then like, where is our energy going? This stored energy, what are we choosing to invest in? What are we choosing to spend money on? Either that gives back to us or that dissipates our energy.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Well, mindfulness is a hugely incredible tool that can help us as individuals, as a community, as a planet. For people who might not have a practice right now, I know we just came up with a whole bunch of practical things that people can do as far as in the world or as an extension of their values. How about just personally, is there a place that you encourage people to start as far as a first step?
Although it's kind of scary, and literally like yesterday, I don't think I had a moment to breathe, which was kind of sad. I got to the end of my day and I was like, oh my gosh, where'd the day go? So I know a lot of people feel like they don't even have time to take a breath. But I think that would be the number one thing, is just put your one hand on your belly and one on your chest, and close your eyes and just take one deep breath. Like, just take a minute if you can. And that can be a game changer. It's amazing how long a minute can feel when we take a minute. I like to walk in my wellness workshops. I like to walk through people through all the different 5 senses of mindfulness. So maybe even just when you go to eat your breakfast, put the smartphone away and just look at the food, smell the food, taste the food, and kind of use all 5 senses. And then maybe take that out to some other experiences. So those would be cheap, ready, and free suggestions. But if you want to go beyond that, oh my gosh, if you search YouTube under mindfulness meditation, or like the Apple Store, or the what do they call it, the App Store, the Play, I forget what they call it on the Android, but where you get your apps. If you just search mindfulness, there's tons of them. My favorite beginner one is Headspace because it's just so fun. But there's also Calm and Meditate. There's a bunch of them. But the Insight Timer is another really basic, simple one where you can choose your starting bell, ending bell, set a timer, and just breathe. And I also love the idea of anchor words. So if you're doing some breath work, just think like breathing in, breathing out, just like that, again and again for like a minute. And it just calms the mind and the nervous system.
Excellent first steps. I love it. And incidentally, I totally agree with you that when I think about the most important thing someone can do for their health, it's to get a relationship with their breath, because it's the bridge between our fight, flight, freeze mode and our rest and repair, rest and digest mode. And that if we come to our breath and we can allow it to be long, slow, deep, easy, and gentle, that's the quality that our nervous system will take on. And so I actually have a free breathing break at brodywelch.com that people can grab as well. Where can people connect with you?
Well, I have my website is SustainableThree, so SustainableThree.com. That's probably the easiest. I have an Instagram, I have a Pinterest, I have a Twitter, and I have a Facebook account. Any of those avenues. I try to post daily, and I've actually recently been to Mexico and got to see the monarch butterfly migration. So if people want to tune into that, I'm sort of on like the 5th or 6th installment of that journey, which was incredible.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I'll make sure that we get links in the show notes to your social media. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. This was fantastic.
Thanks for listening today. For more episodes of A Healthy Curiosity, you can visit the iTunes store. If you appreciated today's show, please leave us a review. This helps other people to find the podcast. You could also head to brodywelch.com, where you can find free self-care resources, learn more about Chinese medicine, and let me know what you'd like to hear about on future episodes. I'd love to hear from you. Till next time, be good to yourself.